waste my life. I don't wanna waste my life. Living in this world.
On the beats.
It's just some things, there's no going back. You know what I'm saying?
jwoodbeats.com.
Yeah, I'm not the one with the issues. I hear you. Now here is your tissue. If I'm moving too fast, I might have to dismiss you. And it's really too bad, cause I really will miss you. But I'm not the one with the issues. I left him at church when I made it official. I murdered the curse with my own benediction. Left God in the dirt, call it death of the fiction. Superstition will be served in eviction. Competition will be left in the ditch. Oh my God, it's too damn hot in this kitchen. The fishes of men are now swimming with fishes. Oops, my bad, I guess I'm moving too vicious. Verses sold, I gotta put them on your wish list. Bless my soul, cause I'm dodging your little hit list. I guess you know, you just lost another witness.
Gotta let me go, gotta let me go, gotta let me go. Gotta let me go, gotta let me go, gotta let me go right now. Gotta let me go, gotta let me go, gotta let me go. Gotta let me go, gotta let me go, gotta let me go, I'm out of here. I can do anything, fuck your opinions and energy. I finally got the epitome. My biggest hindrance was God can't do nothing but fail. Greater is me. I never needed your deity. All of this human capacity. When it gets rough, I can pick myself up and prevail. Cause I don't need anything other than people who fuck with me. Good business, it starts with good company. That's why your boy is obsessed with community. Cause greater is we. We can create opportunity, doing what God never did, cause a God never could, but a people is all we need. Gotta let me go, gotta let me go, gotta let me go, yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome into another round of Bible study with an ex-pastor. I'm super glad to have you all here with us. I think tonight is going to be absolutely incredible. Man, we've been in the book of Exodus now for 7 chapters. I mean, I think we've only done 3 episodes and we've made it through 7 chapters. To me, that's a win. I mean, I don't know what y'all think, but to me, that's a win. It's been an incredibly busy day, man. And Trendview, yes, that was me. Just doing a little bit on the track, doing a little bit. But yeah, man, it's been an incredibly busy day, but I'm so excited. This has been the highlight of my day. I've been waiting to get here all day to hang out with y'all, man. We got Dragons and Genesis with us. Jason is with us, and he's going to be with us for the whole, I almost want to say the whole month of Exodus, but it doesn't quite work that way. But the whole book of Exodus is what he's going to be here with us for. And so I hope y'all are hanging out with us, man. I hope y'all are enjoying these conversations. Have been absolutely amazing. All right, so listen, if you haven't already, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and then consider connecting to this community in whatever way that makes sense to you. We have YouTube, the YouTube membership program, the Patreon program, and we have Discord. And of course, we have merch. We officially have our Poor Fella shirt that's out there, so you might want to check that out. But we also have some other dope designs in the store as well. And for those of you, don't tell nobody, but there's a discount right now on all of our products. You get 20% discount if you use the code, all caps, FAQ Sunday. FAQ Sunday. That's the discount for all of our merch. You can find that on our YouTube page. All right, let me make sure I'm not hitting anything, forgetting anything. I am always hitting stuff. But yes, if you want to volunteer for any of our live shows in the chat, in the production room, which is StreamYard, or for when we do ex-pastor call-in show, also in the Discord, because that's what we use for screening, we now have a way to make that easier for you. And so we have a link that you can just click on, and you can select the day that you're available and the time, and then we'll know, and then we'll grow. All right, so are y'all ready? Are y'all ready for Bible study, man? I'm ready. It's been a long day. I don't know what y'all do. Maybe we're gonna have to have a day where we all get together and talk about what we do at work. But I know all day at work, I was thinking about tonight and getting here and jumping into the book of Exodus.
in chapter 8, because we've talked about a lot. One of the things that Jason brought up last week that I had never even thought about, like I don't even think I thought about it during my deconstruction, was the aspect of how these 10 plagues, which we got into, we got into some of the miracles last week, but how these 10 plagues, that they actually kind of correlate with Egyptian gods and Yahweh's alleged victory over these Egyptian gods. And so we're going to get into a little bit more of that tonight. I am setting up my screen now, making sure that I don't forget to share it, because I think I did last time. And, you know, that happens. Are y'all ready for Jason, man? I'm bringing Jason to the stage. Jason, welcome back with us. How are you feeling, man?
Man, I'm good. When you were about to introduce me, I moved something and a cable got disconnected and I lost camera and mic, and I'm like, you know, and I'm like, hurry up, scrambling, trying to get this stuff connected while you're talking. And
yes,
I think it's working. You know, praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus.
Yeah. I knew if I prayed hard enough, the Lord would hear me.
You know,
technical issues have been resolved.
That's right. God always shows up for the little things.
Yeah. I mean, electronics, they tend to work better when they're plugged in. I don't understand it, but it's just a thing. I don't know.
Oh, man. Yikes. Yes. Well, are you excited about jumping into Exodus 8 tonight, man?
Yeah. We're getting into some fun stuff here, you know?
Yes.
We've got all sorts of craziness about to go on.
Ooh. All right. Well, I am going to go ahead and throw this on the screen with us, and we're going to jump directly into that. Oh, look at us back there. Let me see. Do I want to move us to the bottom? Nah, we're blocking words that way. All right, we'll keep it this way. All right, so Exodus chapter 8, frogs over the land. Now, if that's not sketchy, I don't know what is. But let's start it off. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord says. Let my people go so that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will strike your entire territory with frogs. Oh, I am so scared. The Nile will swarm with frogs, which will come up and go into your house and into your bedroom and on your bed and into the houses of your servants and on your people and into your ovens and kneading bowls. That's pretty specific. So the frogs will come up on you, your people, and on all your servants. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, because I like saying it that way, extend your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the streams, and over the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt. That had to be one hell of a busy day for Aaron, for him running around, stretching his hands out over all the rivers, all the streams, and all the pools. Yikes.
All of them. Every one of them.
Every single one of them, man. So he extended his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. However, the soothsayer priests did the same with their secret art, making frogs come up on the land of Egypt. Now, we have a little pause place here. I want to say, just quickly, before I ask you, why would the Egyptians do the exact same damn thing? Like, that just triggered me a little bit. It's like, oh, so you throwing frogs at us, I'm going to throw frogs at us too.
Yeah. So I think that's actually there for comic relief. You see this in a few different spots in the Bible where when you read something, you're like, oh, this is comedy. The book of Esther is one giant piece of political comedy. That's all the book is. There's almost like some Three Stooges scenes that pop up in that book. But here you have this thing where like Yahweh's like, all right, I'm going to punish him. And he throws something at him. And then the Egyptians, their mages walk over there and they're like, oh, watch this. And then they do the same thing. And all they do is make the situation worse. And they do this like repeatedly. They just keep doing it. And like, oh, yeah. Oh, you turned some water into blood? Well, guess what? I've still got some water. Watch me turn it into blood. So, oh, crap. Now I can't drink it. Oh,
wow.
And they never learn. They, 7 days later, Yahweh's like, hi, you want some frogs? And they're like, do we want some frogs? Do we ever? And then they just throw out some more, and they just keep on doing it. Like pretty much the only one they don't do is when he starts like killing all the firstborn. And then they're like, well, there's no more firstborn left, I guess. So,
yikes.
Yeah. So I think it's there. It's there so that the Hebrew audience can just be like, oh my God, those Egyptians are so stupid. Their wisest men were just making matters worse. So yeah, that's what that's for. It's comic relief.
I would have never caught that before, because when we think about this story and when we associate with this story, it's very dramatic and it's very it's filled with trauma and tension and conflict. But now, just reading through it now and getting some perspective, it's clearly comedy here, and it amazes me that I didn't see that. But now that you say it, it's like now I want them to remake this movie. Because I want to see it that way now.
You want the comedy. Yeah, it was a very wise decision, for Cecil B. DeMille to not put those parts in there.
Yes,
yes. So yeah. Unless, of course, he cast Larry, Curly, and Moe. Then it would have been fantastic. Throwing them in there as the court magicians, that would have been an amazing move. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. It was all very serious. It's a great movie.
Great movie, sure, yes.
But yeah. And the special effects, those were awesome for that time.
Oh, man. Yeah, they were. They were.
Yeah, he goes and he parts the sea, and you're like, how the did they do that? Like, it looked awesome.
Yeah, it definitely made me want to believe in God for sure. I'm like, holy crap, I can do this.
He works in Hollywood.
Yes.
It was some very brilliant work that they did. I wanted to say they got an award for that.
They did.
If they didn't, then that was a curse right there, But yeah, it was amazing work. Great,
damn
acting,
those
fantastic
Egyptians.
Movie.
Man.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to point out here. So this is a jab at the goddess Heket, who is also linked with the Nile. The annual flooding of the Nile, which kind of renewed the land. It fertilized everything. It dumped silt and it watered everything. And this is why the Egyptians didn't have to worry about drought. And this goddess, she has the head of a frog. A lot of the Egyptian deities, it's just like a person with a random animal head.
Yep.
It's kind of like Star Trek. They're not very imaginative when it comes to aliens. They just put a little wrinkle on their nose or on their head or maybe some spot somewhere, and they're like, that's that's not a person. It's not a human. That's totally different. They have pointed ears.
Right.
The Egyptians were like, okay, a crocodile head or the head of, a frog or, they just, that's what they did. They just threw a different head on each of them and, all right, cool, print it. And so that's what this is. And you would think that if, causing a 7-day drought by turning all their water into blood didn't convince them, that Yahweh's next move would be to, kind of, scale it up a little bit, okay? Yeah. But instead of that, he's just like, so there's going to be some frogs, and they're just going to, hop around. I mean, sure, you can eat them, but they're even going to hop in the oven for you. It's convenient.
I saw that.
Oh, and in your bowl? Yeah, and just toss the bowl in the oven with the other frogs. Done. I mean, look, dude, I'm Cajun. We would be like, awesome. We'd be asking our boss if we could have the day off work so we could go out and harvest.
Oh,
man. Dude.
That is hilarious.
So it's like, how is this, he didn't make this any worse. This is this is totally tolerable. Oh man, there's frogs. Okay. And you just eat them.
Yeah. That's
it. Just, free food. Eat them. Cook them. Salt the
manna from
extra
heaven.
meat. Abundance of food. I mean, this is better than manna in the desert. Have you ever had frog legs?
I have not, but I have seen them.
Okay, well, first off, amazing. Second, way better than manna. I've never had manna, but it's hard to beat frog legs. This is not a plague. This is a blessing. You know,
this is a buffet.
This is how you could tell this is an attack against one of their gods, because in no way, shape, or form are they like, oh man, well, at least it's not a bloody river again. They'd be like, dude, we got frogs. We got frogs for days.
Oh man.
You know, this is not a worse situation than the previous chapter. This is by far better. So, that's how you can tell this is just a jab at another one of the Egyptian gods and their, you know, the land that they live in that gets this, you know, pretty common flooding of the Nile, you know, that just kind of, you know, rejuvenates the land. It's an attack against that. It's all symbolic.
Awesome.
You know.
Look like we got somebody chat who did ditto that frog legs are pretty darn good. So, like, you know. That is
Moonbeam Goddess knows what's up.
Knows what's up. All right, so we'll pick up in verse 10. Then he said, tomorrow, so he said, may it be according to your word, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will depart from you and your houses, and from your servants and your people. They will be left only in the Nile. Oh, so this is just like a one-day problem. Yeah. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs which he had inflicted upon Pharaoh. The Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, the courtyards, and the fields. So they piled them in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. We got another one of these little stopping points. What do you want to do?
Yeah, so right here, it's like you have this thing where maybe the inconvenience of constantly stepping on frogs and hearing them ribbit all night long could be something that would convince him. But then Yahweh's like, no, let's change this up. Let's get rid of the frogs. And so then that causes Pharaoh to harden his heart. So Yahweh doesn't directly harden his heart, but he does the thing that causes it, because you need to set up for the next plague.
Yeah.
If he was just like, oh, well, you know, that doesn't work, well, then, you know, you could do the next thing. But the problem is, it would then show that it wasn't really working, and Yahweh has to be constantly active in all this. Yeah. And so it's like, okay. You know, because remember, it was supposed to be a one and done. Something happens, Pharaoh says go, and then they go. But they've got to keep setting up because they got this ever-growing list from these various sources. And, you know, they've got like close to a dozen of these miracles they got to get through. Okay. So Pharaoh's about to be convinced. Wait, no, he's going to get his heart hardened. Okay, now we can do a formulaic repeat and do the next one. And it's just going to keep going like that.
Wow.
Sometimes he hardens his own heart. Sometimes Yahweh does it, or Yahweh causes the thing that then causes the hardening.
I know when I was actually invested in this story as a believer, I actually hated reading this. This was, especially those early years, it took me a long time. Like, by the time I started to get any appreciation for the Exodus narrative, I had already departed from the idea that this could possibly be true. But when I was really invested into this as a truth claim, it was really hard for me to reconcile the idea of an all-powerful God who needs to do 10 different miracles to get his point across. That was like, and so like every chapter, and I remember that when they were walking us through it in Sunday school, and they're like, yeah, this is how good God is, this is how strong God is. And I'm like, if it takes 10 tries, I don't know if this that strong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be able to get it done on the first try, first attempt.
Right. And since he can obviously change Pharaoh's mind, why didn't he just, in the very beginning.
Yes.
Let him go. And Pharaoh goes, cool beans, burrito, and they all just walk out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The end. No snakes, no blood, no lice, no leprosy, no nothing. You don't even have to have mountains of dead frogs. You don't have to kill any babies.
Yes.
Just, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and then Moses said, let my people go, and Yahweh's spirit entered him, and Pharaoh said, all right, and that's it, like... But then, we would lose like 10 chapters of Exodus if we did that.
These were real authors indeed, because I know as a novel writer, there's probably plenty of chapters in my books where people are like, okay, we could have just ended right here. But hey, you got to have that page count, right? You got to have that page count.
Yeah. It's like Stephen King's early novels where he was literally being paid by the word.
Yes.
It's like, let me tell you about the history of this one gas station. Doesn't matter to the story at all, but you're going to hear it.
You're going to hear it. You're going to learn about this. I love it. All right. So we are apparently moving on from frogs. Sorry for those frog leg lovers. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, extend your staff and strike the dust of the earth so that it may turn into gnats through all the land of Egypt. Now, this may be the most impressive miracle I've seen so far. This is a little different. He's turning the dust into gnats. Wow. They did so. And Aaron extended his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and there were gnats on every person and animal. All the dust of the earth turned into the gnats through all the land of Egypt. Okay, so they're in Alabama now. The soothsayer priests tried with their secret arts to produce gnats, but they could not. So there were gnats on every person and animal. Okay, I just want to point something out in this sentence. Okay, it says the soothsayers tried to produce gnats, and they could not, so there were gnats on every person. I just want to remind everybody, if they could, there would still be gnats on every person, because they just would have added more gnats. But we're going to come back to that. Then the soothsayer priests say to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. That's powerful. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Wow. We got another one of those stopping points. How you feeling?
Yeah, so most Bibles translate the word for this animal here as gnats, but this word is one of those unique words. It only appears in the context of the plagues. Here in chapter 8, also in Psalm 78 and Psalm 105.
Ooh.
Always in connection with the plagues. And the word could be translated a few ways, because they've got a few guesses as to what it could be, because they don't exactly know. So It could be gnats, which would be weird because they're going to have another plague of flies. It could also be lice. So, and which kind of matches with them, like, being all over everybody. Maybe they're turning all the things into lice. Another possible translation is wild animals. Just a mix of wild animals, so it could be like, I don't know, jackals and buzzards and, scorpions and maybe some whales and, who knows?
Holy shit.
While grammatically it would work in the sentence, when it talks about it being all over everybody, that's probably not the best.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's lice, because it would be different enough from the next plague of the flies. But a lot of people like gnats for some reason. Now this is Yahweh transforming the dust into gnats or lice is a jab at the god Geb, who is the god of dust. And I want to point out here that if you took all of the dust in Egypt, which is like, all of Egypt, and you turn that into bugs, of whatever kind. Yeah, I think like the entire world would kind of know that there was, I don't know, trillions of gnats that just suddenly came out, and then like all the pyramids would just like fall down to the bedrock because, you know, everything beneath them just kind of went away.
That's right. Yes.
And then like after they like did everything, when it all gets turned back, did all the gnats or lice crawl back underneath the houses and lift them up so they could turn back into dust and put everything back the way it was? You know, I mean, like,
Wow.
I don't know.
Yikes. And you know, and the aspect, and I never really thought about lice because I didn't read the KJV much after my early years, and I didn't spend much time in Exodus either. But I do know that lice was a common problem in ancient Egypt. Lice. I don't want to say lice have been found. I don't want to. Is there such thing as lice residue? We'll just say lice evidence. Lice evidence have been found in mummies and in some of the ancient Egyptian combs and things of that nature. So that does make a lot of sense that this plague would play on that phenomenon as opposed to gnats and then moving to flies.
Right.
That does not make great sense.
Right. Yeah, and they didn't have like a Walgreens they could go to get that stuff. Now see, I don't have to worry about that because like if lice get on my head, they just slide right off.
Slide right on off. Yes, indeed.
So
the bald and the beautiful, man. That's the world. That's the world. All right, let's pick it on up. Let me get back on the right screen because I'm over here looking up lice stuff. All right, so the Lord said to Moses, "Rise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water, and say to him, 'This is what the Lord says: Let my people go, so that they may serve me.'" Now, at this moment, Moses, you are stalking, and I just want you to know that if I'm just showing up at water and you just there, you're stalking me, bro. You're going too far. "For if you're not going to let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and on your servants and on your people and into your houses, and the houses of the Egyptians will be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they live. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people are living, so that no swarms of flies will be there, in order that you may know that I, the Lord, am in the midst of the land." So he just says, all the other plagues, I let my people get fucked up by too. But this one, since you have not changed your mind, I'm going to protect them this time to show you something different. This guy's a great negotiator here. "I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign will occur." Then the Lord did so, and thick swarms of flies entered the house of Pharaoh and the houses of his servants, and the land was laid waste because of the swarms of flies in all the land of Egypt. All right, we got another one of those stopping points. How you feeling?
Yes, so there's a few little things. There's actually some stuff in here that's very subtle that most people are not going to get unless you read a bunch of the boring books like I do. So, all right, so he's throwing out these flies, and that's going to, just be another whole thing, right? And this is Khepri, the god of creation, sun, and rebirth.
Yes.
And he has the head of a fly. Now, here's two things. One, he's separating the Hebrew people from the Egyptians. Okay, there's a chance that this was when in one of the lists of plagues that this was the first one that was mentioned, because the distinction between the Hebrew people and the Egyptians is there to foreshadow separating the Hebrew babies from the Egyptian babies whenever the angel of death rolls around and starts murdering a bunch of children. Okay.
Yeah.
And so in Hebrew literature, they like to bookend things where you have something and then you have this whole big story and then you have something very similar at the end of it. And that's why some scholars think that in one of the lists, the thing of flies showing up and being separated in the land of Goshen from the rest of Egypt, it was the first in the list, and then it culminated with the slaughter of the firstborn. Have a separation, and then some other plagues and a separation. Another thing, though, another layer to this. Khepri was a god of creation and the sun. And here Yahweh is doing a separation between these two different lands. This is the 6-day creation story in which he separates the light from the dark, and he starts arranging all of the chaos by separating things in order to bring forth the world in which the people live in. And that's how you end up with the sun up in the sky as being this light. And so that's one of the things we're seeing here. It's a nod to that idea, and it shows the brilliance of these ancient authors. Some people have this idea that the Bible is a collection of writings written by a bunch of goat herders. No one who herded animals wrote a single line of the Bible.
Right.
These were very well educated, wealthy, upper class citizens. These people, they did not have calluses on their hands, okay? Yeah. These were extremely well-off people who wrote every line of these books, okay? And that's what you're seeing here, is people who spent as much paper plotting out the story as they did writing it. And, being like, oh, hang on, I want to do this thing. I can also use this separation for this. And that's what they're doing here. So it's to foreshadow the final plague. And it's also there to kind of give a nod when you're talking about this creation, and the sun, the separating of the light and dark and the water from the land and all of the rest.
Absolutely. Man, and
that's why the wording is suddenly different from the others.
Thank you for hitting that aspect that these weren't shepherds who were writing this, and I think some of that comes from Pauline type of propaganda, where Paul continues to remind people that God's superpower is turning fools into wise men. And it's also just this idea that where we were really attached to the idea that the disciples are responsible for the Bible. It's a lot of that superstitious thinking that doesn't allow us to really look at the Bible and see it as the type of work that it is, which is a sophisticated piece of cultural literature that served different purposes over its time. And was actually, in a very real sense, is a reactionary piece of literature. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but in the sense of these are people who are trying to find a way to bring some stability to their identity and to assert their sovereignty, which is something that we see all nations do. And so this is very much, especially the Old Testament, is very much a national polemic. This is who we are. This is how we come to be, and we, in the U.S., we have stories like that ourselves that are things that are not necessarily based in truth, not based in historical accuracy, but have become a part of the folklore. But we weave them into our narratives for very real reasons, or the people who decided to weave these into the narrative. So this is good stuff, man.
Yeah. And on that note, there's a very good book that some people should read called Why the Bible Began by Jacob L. Wright. He's a professor, I believe, in Atlanta, and this guy, he's a Christian, and it's his belief that the Old Testament was not written to be scripture. It was written as revisionist history in order to form a sort of unified identity from these disparate groups of people in the wake of the Babylonian exile. And he goes through like chapter by chapter, taking all of these different examples from all over the Bible to demonstrate how that is exactly what the message is.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a fantastic book. I interviewed him on my channel. Brilliant scholar. I highly recommend the book. Each chapter is sort of like a self-contained essay. He explains a problem. He sets the thing up. He shows how the thing works. He gives some examples. He wraps it up with a brief conclusion and then moves on. It's a lot of bite-sized information, very easy to read, especially for like this scholarly material. A lot of that stuff is really dry, and it takes someone like, it almost takes an autistic with, biblical studies as his special interest to digest some of this stuff. His book is not that. You can sit down and get engrossed in this thing, but at the same time, you still get that rich information. So definitely check that out.
I am definitely going to look for that. I did throw it on the screen for a little bit for those of you who are watching, and that was when the Bible began, right?
Yeah, why the Bible began.
Why the Bible began.
It goes into like why these books were written, and why the question of why is so important.
Yes.
So
I love that. I love it. All right, let's pick right on up. Verse 25. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Go sacrifice to your God within the land." But Moses said, "It's not permissible for us to do so, because we will sacrifice to the Lord our God that which is an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice that which is an abomination to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us?" Aha. Now let me stop. "We must go a 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, just as he commands us." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go so that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far away. Plead for me." Then Moses said, "Behold, I am going to leave you, and I will plead with the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only do not let Pharaoh deal deceitfully again in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." All right, we're another one of those stopping. Well, I'll read these three since it is at the end.
Yeah.
So Moses left Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord. The Lord did as Moses asked and removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and he did not let the people go. I just want to add that it seems to me Moses was asking the wrong person to let the people go. He should have been asking God. He should have, because it seems that God is the one holding up the deliverance here. I just wanted to throw that in there. All right, what you got for us?
So we're again seeing this this detail in which you can't worship Yahweh in the presence of these other gods. You've got basically like one type of deity worshipped here, you have to go somewhere else. Plus, as we talked about last episode, this is a wilderness god. You can't worship him in the presence of like, a god of the Nile or something. That's a whole different place. You got to go into the wilderness to do this. And so, we're seeing another instance of that popping up in this chapter.
Oh,
and also, here, they're not talking about getting the people out of slavery. They're just talking about them engaging in proper worship.
Wow.
This is a very different type of story than what we've been led to believe.
That's right. Yes.
Because, and this shows that, there were stories floating around in which it was all about people maintaining their cultural and religious identity while in a foreign land. And this was not originally about leaving that land and going to some other place to become their own people. This was originally a message to people living in Egypt to be like, remain good Jews. The exact same way that the book of Daniel is all about that. It's people living in Babylon, remain good Jews while you're in a foreign land. And that's it. It's not about, here's how you're going to escape. They're not even trying to. They're just trying to walk 3 days away, make a sacrifice, and come back to resume their work. That's it. The idea that they're trying to go and found a whole nation hasn't even entered the story yet.
Right.
later authors picked this up and said, okay, we can use this as a foundational piece of literature. So that's why we're seeing this repeated thing about, we just need to walk off and make some sacrifices, then we'll come back. Because they haven't gotten this idea yet to use this as foundational literature. This is just about people living in Egypt, being good Jews.
Wow. And that is again another dynamic that's clearly in the text and is clearly in the context, but this is a clear example of how our presuppositions or our preimpositions even on the text often form or shape what we're reading. So even when we're reading it, and it clearly, because all you just pointed out what it says. It doesn't say that let us go for freedom. This whole time, the let us go is we're just going to go worship and we're going to come back. But even when this is preached, when I've talked about this story as a pastor, when my mentors have talked about this story, that part is absolutely never stressed. But it's something to always remind people that there is a large group of people who believed the Bible before they ever read it. So in that sense is they already had these narratives about the Bible that they already knew to be true. Let me get my little rabbit quotes in here, that they already knew to be true. And so when they're reading the stories, we often read the stories through that lens. And that's often how I've reconciled that dissonance. But then also, I like the fact that you keep bringing us back to the fact that this God has this like geolocation where he has to be worshipped. He has to be worshipped in the wilderness. And that's not the theme that we just see in the Old Testament, because we see this with both John the Baptist and with Jesus. John the Baptist is described as a voice crying out from the wilderness, and then Jesus, when he goes to fast for 40 days and 40 nights, his chosen place to do that is in the wilderness. And like, man, my mind is blown. Yahweh is a wilderness God. That's why you're going to be stuck in the struggle, because your God wants you in the wilderness. I'm just letting y'all know. That's why you're struggling. All right. How do you feel about making it through another chapter?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. I think I can just press the arrow. Love it when I can do that. Yep. Oh man, we're getting to the part about death. I'm curious. I am curious to know, and I probably need to put this back on the screen. How many of you caught the reference to Darth Plagueis in the title of tonight's episode? I would like to know that in the comments and in the chat. Since it was about plagues and it's Plagueis and it's kind of a dark subject, so it works out. Even though we just found out this is actually a comedy. Now that was enlightening, but you do kind of see it here. All right, so chapter 9, Egyptian livestock are dying. The Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and speak to him. This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them the way that I keep hardening your heart to do, behold, the hand of the Lord will come with a very severe plague on your livestock. Now, I do want to point out, this definitely sounds like God is talking about his pimp hand here. And so I want to, he says, behold, the pimp hand will be very strong against you and your livestock, which are in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the herds, and on the flocks. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing will die of all that belongs to the sons of Israel. And the Lord set a definite time, saying, tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land. So the Lord did this thing on the next day, and all the livestock, where did I go? And all the livestock of Egypt died, but not one of the livestock of the sons of Israel died. And Pharaoh sent men, and they learned that, behold, not even one of the livestock of Israel was dead. But the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. What you got for us before we move on?
Yeah, so definitely he's turning things up now. He's not just being an inconvenience. And definitely he's saying my pimp hand is way strong. He probably said it in his best Snoop Dogg voice. And then he's going to come in here and he's going to attack the cattle. Okay, this is the god Hathor, goddess of love and protection, head of a cow. And so that's what we're going with here. Tackling another Egyptian deity, getting rid of some cattle, really messing things up for this whole country. And of course, it's going to be like the people of Egypt who are going to feel the worst of it, not the Pharaoh, but Pharaoh's going to get his eventually, but not yet. We're building up to that. And again, we're seeing a distinction, a separation here that we didn't see earlier. It started, with which plague was that? The fourth plague. It started with the flies there. Okay, we're going to start, separating this thing, not in the land of Goshen, but the rest of Egypt. And so here we're still seeing it. The Hebrews and the Egyptians, they're being separated. The Hebrew cows are left alone. I guess maybe they were circumcised, and that's how he knew not to kill them. And then all the Egyptian cows, those things get slaughtered. So yeah, we're still seeing this this build up and this separation. So
man. Yeah. All right, let's see what the next plague is.
I want you to note here.
Yeah.
So all the Egyptian livestock just got killed, okay? Yahweh just came and he killed all the Egyptian livestock. Keep that in mind, okay? As we move forward, keep that in mind.
Ooh, all right. Let's see here. The plague of boils. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take for yourselves handfuls of soup from a clyn, and Moses shall toss it toward the sky in the sight of Pharaoh. Then it will become fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and will turn into boils breaking out with sores on every person and animal through all the land of Egypt. So they took soot from a clyn, and which stood before Pharaoh. And Moses tossed it toward the sky, and it became boils breaking out with sores on every person and animal. Okay, that's an interesting trick. The soothsayer priest could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were on the soothsayer priest as well as on all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. We've come to another one of those pauses. How you feeling?
Yeah, so this is the goddess Isis, who is involved with medicine. So taking soot and ashes, this was a common ingredient in a lot of ancient medicine. The Egyptians were actually famous for their medicine. We actually have these copper plates in which these people, these ancient doctors, would basically record like how to diagnose a particular ailment, how to treat it, how to do follow-up. And a lot of these things actually contain some really good information. And so their medicine was quite advanced for the time. I watched this one documentary a while back where this guy, he was reading some of the translations of these things, and he went to Egypt and he got his hands on these different ingredients, and he kind of just mixed up this concoction. And he they tested some of this stuff, and the thing was, it was a pain remedy.
Wow. They
tested this stuff, and it was like, dude, it's aspirin. You mix this stuff up, you get aspirin. Okay. Salicylic acid. Which I know that because of an episode of the Tick cartoon. Anyway, like they had stuff like that. They were performing like cranial surgery.
Yes.
They had all kind of like pretty advanced medicine for the time. Okay. And one of the things was like treatment for like skin conditions. Often you would put ashes and stuff over it, and it would do a variety of things. One, it could kind of dry it out and make the problem less severe. If it was something that was contagious, it could reduce the chance of it, being spread to people, which was, a really bad problem at the time, because you could have this huge outbreak that could, ravage a city. And also, people would also swallow ashes because it's basically just carbon. And carbon is extremely porous and it reacts with almost everything. So if you had like eaten something bad, if you swallowed it, carbon will bond with a lot of those things. And now it's basically trapped and it can pass through your body and do far less damage. There's actually a thing later, I believe, in the book of Leviticus where they do the whole trial of bitter waters to basically test to see if a pregnant woman, if the baby is like for her husband or for some other man.
Yes.
And you take some stuff along with some ashes from the altar and you mix this stuff up and she drinks it. And then if her womb withers, basically if it causes an abortion, then obviously she was cheating. If it doesn't, then the baby must be for her husband and she's innocent. I think the reason, basically it talks about how they're making this abortifacient, but then they add in these ashes from the altar. I think what they're doing is they're diluting it. So it isn't necessarily going to be effective.
Wow.
And they've now introduced random chance into this. So she takes this concoction, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, instead of just taking it and it just instantly. So I think I've never read that anywhere. That's just my own personal speculation. I kind of went through it in more detail in the little Q&A episode I did a few years back. So please don't think that this is like the gospel truth.
Right.
That's just my speculation here. But so that's one of these things. They're using this ashes, which was often involved in medicine, and they're now using it to cause a plague. And so it's doing the exact opposite of what ISIS would want. This is not a cure. This is a cause. And so that's what we're doing here. And of course, it also affects the magicians. So these dudes who release their own frogs and blood onto the land, now they're afflicted and they can't even cure themselves. So again, we have that thing of our God is better than your God. We've got the big magic and yours doesn't work. And then it goes and these boils get on the livestock that just died and it kills them again. So livestock have died twice now. They're all dead again. I guess they rose up as like zombie cows, and so now they
cut out the chapter of the zombie cows. Why would they cut that chapter out?
Right. So the livestock have now been killed twice. So let's get started on plague number 7 now. See what happens then.
You now make me wish that I would have named this episode Ashy Abortions, because even though the abortions are later on in Leviticus, we're going to see some of that in Exodus too. So Ashy Abortions would have worked very well for this episode. Man, that would have been good. Okay, so let me jump over here, pull this back up here. All right, verse 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says, let my people go so that they may serve me. For this time I am going to send all my plagues on you and your servants and your people, so that you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. And last time you deliberately disobeyed me. I just had to do that. Rest in peace. My guy's gone, James Earl Jones. All right, I'm back. For had I now put on my hand and struck you and your people with plague, you would then have been eliminated from the earth. Well, you could have started there. But indeed, for this reason, I have allowed you to remain, in order to show you my power and in order to proclaim my name throughout the earth. Still, you exalt yourself against my people by not letting them go. You want to keep rolling here a little bit?
Roll real quick. So Yahweh keeps getting in the way, preventing them from going and doing what they need to do for the sole purpose of glorifying himself. The whole purpose of this is so that more people will know how powerful he is. And this is going to be stated repeatedly in these chapters. The reason for all of this, for all of the death and destruction and humiliation and discomfort and suffering, is so that more people understand how powerful Yahweh is. This is revenge fiction that we're reading here. This is the this is the Israelites being like, yeah, we really hate those Egyptians, and so we're going to pretend like Yahweh is just beating them mercilessly on our account.
Wow. I definitely get it, man. Oh man, this is absolutely beautiful here, and I love it. You're bringing so much insight to this. And I hope y'all are appreciating this. I hope y'all are appreciating what Jason is bringing to the table for this, because this is like, what? And yes, what you see clearly here with the plagues is that God is indeed a narcissist. If you did not know it before, you now know it. He said, you know what? I could have just, spoke to Pharaoh in the very beginning. Like, I think Moonbeam God is brought up, where God actually speaks to Abimelech and on Sarah's behalf, and Abimelech is like, all right, I'm cool, I'll let them go. He can't do that to Pharaoh, because in this sense he has a bigger audience and he wants to show off. So because God wants to show off, that's exactly what he does. He says, you know what, let's punish people a little while longer because I want them to know how great I am. Man, who wouldn't want a God like that? That's just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, so let's get to the plague of hail, which, man, that can be fun. Hail in Egypt. Yeah, that's definitely fun. Behold, about this time tomorrow, I will send a very heavy hail, such as has not been seen in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. So now send word, bring your livestock and whatever you have in the field to safety. Every person and animal that is found in the field is not brought home. When the hail comes down on them, they will die for the third time. Everyone among the servants of Pharaoh's who feared the word of the Lord hurried to bring his servants and his livestock into the houses. But everyone who did not pay regard to the word of the Lord left his servants and his livestock in the field. All right, we're at another one of those stopping points. How you feeling?
Let's see. Yeah, go ahead and keep going.
All right. Now the Lord said to Moses, reach out with your hand toward the sky so that hail may fall on the land of Egypt, on every person and animal, and on every plant of the field throughout the land of Egypt. So Moses reached out with his staff towards the sky, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. Oh, okay. And the Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire flashing intermittently in the midst of the hail, which was very heavy, such as not occurred in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. The hail struck everything that was in the field through all the land of Egypt, from people to animals. The hail also struck every plant of the field and shattered every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the sons of Israel were, was there no hail. Wow. There's a lot going on here. There's fire, there's ice. Where's George R.R. Martin when you need him? This is a Dance of Dragons if I ever seen one before. And what's amazing to me here is that the hail is shattering every tree of the field. And I'm trying to figure out what kind of hell is this where it's shattering the trees, and how is it still hell if it's also fire? I am so confused. So confused. Let's see here. You want to read a few more?
Yeah, go ahead and keep going.
Then Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron and said to them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is the righteous one, and I and my people are the wicked ones. Plead with the Lord, for there has been enough of God's thunder and hail, and I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. Moses said to him, as soon as I get out of the city, I will spread out my hands to the Lord, and the thunder will cease, and there will no longer be hail, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear the Lord God. Now the flax and the barley were ruined, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was in the bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not ruined, for they ripened late. So Moses left the city from his meeting with Pharaoh and spread out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and the hail stopped, and rain no longer poured on the earth. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had stopped, he sinned again and hardened his heart, he and his servants. So Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not let the sons of Israel go, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses. We made it.
All right, so this is Nut, the goddess of the sky, and that's why you have all this horrible stuff. This rain and hail and fire and lightning all coming down from the sky. Okay, and but we have some other things going on here. So, in this thing, it basically says that Yahweh has threatened to unleash all of his power against them. I think that in here, this was meant to basically be like the final plague.
Yeah, I can see that.
But, because he's like, all right, look, I'm pulling out all the stops.
Yes.
And he throws everything he has. And so they copy that in. But then they've got other stories that are also in there. I think they should have kind of like changed up the order, put this one right as like the 9th plague. I think that would have fit a little bit better.
Yep.
But so yeah, we have that little thing. The livestock have just died for a 3rd time.
Yes.
So killed him again. Talk about beating a dead horse. He's always all about that. Now this lightning and fire falling from the sky, this is a mixture of storm and volcano god imagery, 2 things that Yahweh is associated with.
Wow.
The column of smoke and the column of fire that we're going to see later, that's volcano imagery. But he's also frequently spoken of in terms of a storm god. He's the rider on the clouds and all sorts of other things. And these are details borrowed directly from the Canaanite god Baal. Oh. And one of the things that Baal does is he occasionally ruins the grain harvest. So in Canaan, you'd have like the spring rains and stuff, and that's all fine. And then everything's growing. And then right before the harvest, you're getting into the early fall. It's time to go out there and start picking all the grain. And then sometimes they would get these storms that would come in and ruin it right before they could harvest. And then, so what they would do is they had this, there was this myth how Baal got in a fight with his brother Mot, who was the god of death. And Mot killed him and like chopped him up. And what they would do is they had this ritual that they would do in which the people, they would basically reenact this, in which they would kill the god Baal and eat him in order to hopefully like thwart his power so he wouldn't bring the late rains and storms that would ruin the crops. And then he would be resurrected later on in the year, and the whole cycle would start anew. And if you're looking at this and thinking, wait, so there's this bread god and people ritualistically eat him in this whole thing about nature renewal? That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Right.
You can draw a pretty direct line going from Baal to Yahweh to Jesus. This is basically the grandfather of the Jesus story, is the legend of Baal. getting in a fight with Moat, and he dies, and he goes into the underworld, and then he's later resurrected. This is common nature renewal, creation through combat. That's what we're seeing here, and this is the same story being recycled to be about Yahweh getting in a fight with Egypt.
Wow!
And so that's what we have right there. And another layer to this is Egypt was kind of like the breadbasket of the Mediterranean world. Well, everyone else had to deal with storms and drought and everything else. Egypt didn't have that. Yeah. They had the Nile. And so they could produce copious amounts of grain and sell it and export it all over.
Yeah.
They thrived on that. Their economy was built on that. And like even the book of Genesis, every time there's a drought, what do? They leave their land and they run to Egypt. Abraham did it. Joseph did it. That's what you do. You go to Egypt. And here they're like, just as the turning the Nile into blood is meant to attack the Nile, here they're attacking their food source. They're getting rid of the idea that Egypt is this stable economy with this thriving agriculture. Like, no, you don't get that anymore. You're going to suffer drought like we do, and you're going to suffer famine like we do.
Yeah. Man, that the connection between Baal and Moat is definitely new to me, or at least the story about Moat cutting up Baal into several different pieces, because the Egyptians had a similar story about Osiris, where his brother Set did the same thing to him, chopped him up into many pieces, I don't know if they ate him. I think they spread him out all over the place.
Yeah, but I think he was scattered.
Yeah. That is very interesting to see those parallels, and then the way you tied that into, even though I was familiar with the idea of the broken-bodied God, I didn't connect that to Jesus. It never crossed my mind, but no, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, and Jesus is a grain and land fertility God linked with the renewal cycles of nature.
Wow.
And once you understand that and you read the stories of Jesus, you're like, has nothing, like, regardless of whether or not the historical person ever existed, the stories we have are ancient. They predate Christianity. They predate Judaism.
Yes.
Okay. This is not a story of a Jewish carpenter. This is the stories of ancient deities that, and these stories, a lot of them actually predate writing. Like when writing first popped up, all these different cultures started writing about the same things. They already had the story. So the stories were already there and had already spread.
Wow. Oh man. This has been absolutely excellent. I know you are still recovering from a sore throat. You want to make it through another chapter?
Let's keep going. This cough drop is starting to kick in now.
Awesome. All right, we're going on to chapter 10. Let me put this back on the screen. Let's lock and load. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, so that I may perform these signs of mine among them, these signs of mine, and that you may tell in the presence of your son and of your grandson how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and how I perform my signs among them, so that you may know that I am the Lord." All right, that's only 2 verses, so I'll read a little bit more. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go so that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they will cover the surface of the land, so that no one will be able to see the land. They will also eat the rest of what has survived, what is left to you from the hail. And they will eat every tree of yours which grows in the field, which has already been shattered by the hail, which we discussed. Then your houses will be filled with them, together with the houses of all your servants and the houses of all the Egyptians, something which neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen from the day that they came upon the earth until this day. And he turned and left Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's servant said to him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the people go so that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is destroyed? So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, go serve the Lord your God. Who specifically are the ones who are going? Moses said, we shall go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds, we shall go. For we must hold a feast to the Lord. So that was Moses' way of saying everybody. For those of y'all who didn't get it, he just said everybody. Then he said to them, so may the Lord be with you when I let you and your little ones go. Watch out, for evil is on your mind. Not so. Go now, but only the men among you, and serve the Lord, since that is what you desire. So they were driven out from the Pharaoh's presence. How are you feeling about this stopping place?
Yeah, keep on rolling. Keep on rolling.
All right, let's lock and load. Then the Lord said to Moses, reach out with your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come up on the land of Egypt and eat every plant of the land and everything that the hail has left, which is apparently a lot. So Moses reached out with his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord directed an east wind on the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. The locusts come up all over the land of Egypt and settled in all the territory of Egypt. They were very numerous. There had never been so many locusts, nor would there be so many again, for they covered the surface of the whole land, so that the land was darkened, and they ate every plant of the land and all the fruit of the trees and that the hail had left. Therefore, nothing green was left on tree or plant of the field throughout the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh hurriedly called for Moses and Aaron, and he said, I've sinned against the Lord your God and against you. So now please forgive my sin only this once, and plead with the Lord your God that he would only remove this death from me. Then he left Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord. So the Lord shifted the wind to a very strong west wind, which picked up the locust and drove them into the Red Sea. Not one locust left in all the territory of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the sons of Israel go. This
All
is
right.
a yikes.
Yeah. So lots to get into here. So
yes.
So one thing I'm going to kind of start at the end. It talks about how like this whole swarm of locusts, they were driven into the Sea of Reeds, and not one of them was left. Throughout Hebrew literature, you will see armies of foreign invaders being referenced as like swarms of locusts. This pops up a lot in the prophetic books, especially.
Wow.
And this thing right here, the whole swarm goes into the Sea of Reeds and is destroyed, and not one of them is left. This is telling you what is going to happen later, okay? And
Yes.
that's why it happened that way instead of them just going away as they do, as other plagues do, okay? This is foreshadowing, okay? So, same way that separating the Hebrew and the Egyptians, and this is foreshadowing here, okay? It's a literary device. Now, the plague of locusts, this is likely the god Set or Seth, god of like storms and disasters, including plagues of locust. And in like, we don't really understand this because we're lucky, at least those of us who live in the United States.
Right.
Like, we have lots of different types of grasshoppers. None of them that we have, none of our species of grasshoppers swarm. That's what a locust is. It's not a specific type of insect. It's any species of grasshopper that swarms. Okay, it's more about a type of behavior, and we don't have any. We used to way back in the day, but they were all probably killed by some horribly toxic pesticide that gave a bunch of our babies cancer. But we no longer have locusts in the United States. So we don't really understand this, but a locust swarm, especially in the ancient world before, pesticides and stuff, was extremely devastating. Way worse than having a bunch of frogs in your front yard. These things, they would blanket the sky. Like you could literally look up and not be able to see the sun. We're talking like billions of these insects, and they could strip a field clean in moments. And so months of hard work to provide food for your community for the next year, and all of a sudden this dark cloud comes up over the horizon, and in 30 minutes you no longer have food. Everything is gone, okay? And then they move on and they continue the next field and they could ruin an entire country's crops in a matter of days. And like it's like a locust swarm. Sometimes these things were so big, it could take days for the swarm to fly past. Okay. Wow. This is tremendously devastating. Okay. This is like the most unimaginably horrible thing that could happen to an ancient culture is to get hit with a locust swarm. Okay. So this is way worse than like fire coming down from the sky and killing your cows. Okay. You think that's bad? No, a swarm of locusts is worse than that. Okay? Wow. That's why it shows up so late in the list. And so and again, Pharaoh's ready to do this stuff. He's, all right, y'all can go. And I was like, no, we ain't done with you yet. Still got to harden your heart. We still got to go some more. And Pharaoh, he does this thing where he's like, all right, look, the men can go and make sacrifice, but not the kids, because I need you to come back. Yeah. Okay. But we're kind of seeing he's gradually getting closer. Okay, some of you can go, but not all. And so we're getting there. We're inching closer to it, but things haven't become bad enough yet.
Wow.
But again, they're not to leave Egypt. They're only going to go worship, and then they're just going to come right back home. That detail doesn't exist yet, okay? And the east wind, this is very important. We see, especially in Isaiah and Jeremiah, whenever Yahweh sends the Babylonians to go and destroy Judah, he sends them from Mount Zaphon in western Syria. And he's orchestrating all this from his holy mountain. Well, here he's orchestrating all this from the Midian Valley over across the Sinai in northwest Arabia. That's why it comes from the east. It's coming from Yahweh and his holy mountain over in this area, because he's this little regional deity. And that's where he's sending these things from. And so they come from, like a cave in Yahweh's mountain, and they fly over and they destroy all this stuff in Egypt. And then he takes them and he throws them into this marshy area, and they all drown to foreshadow the destruction of these other people.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what we're seeing here.
Oh man, this is, I don't want to be swarmed by locusts ever in my life. I don't want to see it. I'm good. All right, let's roll a little bit more.
Yeah.
Then the Lord said to Moses, reach out with your hand toward the sky, so that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even the darkness which may be felt. So Moses reached out with his hand toward the sky, and there was thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the sons of Israel had light in their dwellings. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and said, go serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds be left behind. Even your little ones may go with you. But Moses said, you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, so that we may sacrifice them to the Lord our God. Therefore, our livestock too shall go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind. for we shall take some of them to serve the Lord our God. Some, and until we arrive there, we ourselves do not know what we shall serve, with what we shall serve the Lord. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, get away from me. Be careful. Do not see my face again. For on the day you see my face, you shall die. For those of you who don't know what he's saying next time you see me, it's on sight, player. It's on sight. Catch me outside is what he said there. Moses said, you have spoken correctly. I shall never see your face again. So they're both liars, is what we're going to find out in the next chapter. But so we made it through chapter 10. Tell me, what did we just stumble across here with these last few verses?
So this is kind of like we're advancing the plot, and we're setting up for the next phase of the story. The tensions are being raised. Things are, the threats are being ratcheted up. We've gone from like, pretty minor things like, oh man, we got to like dig a well to get some water, to fire's falling from the sky and all the food in the world is gone. Oh, and the ground turned into bugs and crawled all over me for a while, okay. And there's a mountain of dead frogs that I didn't get to eat. So things are getting worse. Okay. And now like Pharaoh's pissed. He's kind of issuing this Garden of Eden threat, on that day you shall die, like he's, an apple you're not supposed to eat. So yeah, this is one of those things where you're like, oh man, we're getting to that part of the movie. Someone's about to croak. So yeah, we can definitely see that things are not going well for the Egyptians, and something's got to give, So, yeah.
Wow. No, this is interesting because this is definitely just kind of watching the narrative and this build up as we move from chapter to chapter. And I can kind of remember wrestling with this in my early years of it almost seemed like, if I'm just reading this for the very first time, it almost seemed like Moses's, and that's of course with the presupposition that Moses's idea is, I'm going to get y'all to freedom, but I'm going to have to lie to do it. So I'm going to tell Pharaoh, we're going to go worship just for a few days, and then we'll be back. But I got to find a way to work it up to where he'll let all of y'all come. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to work up a few magic tricks, and then we're going to go back and forth. And then eventually he's going to, like, because that's just how it read to me. It was like, oh my goodness, which is like, and then they're just kind of going back to Genesis with some of Jacob's stories. You see a lot of that same thing. And so it's like, man, God just really loves liars, doesn't he? As long as it appeals to his narcissism and his ego and he gets to put on a party, he is all good. And I think he likes it when he doesn't have to put on a party, but people say he did and he didn't. I think he likes that too.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And something to remember is that there's no commandment against lying. People often think like, oh, it says don't bear false witness. No, that means do not lie under oath. Okay. Wow. When you're in court and you put your hand on the Bible, and that's what that means. It doesn't say anything about being honest with other people. It's like when you are giving testimony.
That's right.
Speak truthfully.
Wow.
That's it. It doesn't say that you don't lie to your neighbor. Screw that guy.
Which is how Rahab makes it in the Hall of Faith. She makes it in the Hall of Faith because of a lie that she tells.
Yeah. Yeah, and like cunning and guile were very positive traits in the ancient world, okay?
That's right. Yes.
Like, look at Odysseus. The dude was a scumbag. And he was like this great hero. Like the whole thing about, this great honorable person stuff. Man, that's only a few centuries old, okay? And even then, a lot of the stuff that these great honorable heroes did, in stories from a century ago, or even 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago, some of these people, you could end up in prison now, you know, like,
Yes.
you know, so yeah, lying, that was totally okay. Like, they didn't care about that. You know, if it served your purpose and you were lying to the bad guys, that was a good thing.
Yep.
You know, they didn't see anything wrong with that. That wasn't like, oh, well, you know, Moses was an okay guy, but he also told some lies. No, they were like, man, he fooled that Pharaoh, didn't he?
Oh man.
And I also want to point out here that, no, I'm sorry. Go continue, because I got something I'm going to be pointing out soon.
Awesome. Let me make sure I'm at the right spot. Yep, we're on to the next chapter. Let me get us back up. The last plague. Yes. Now the Lord said to Moses, one more plague I will bring on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will assuredly drive you out from here completely. Speak now so that the people hear that each man is to ask of his neighbor and each woman of her neighbor articles of silver and articles of gold. Now, if they're all living in Goshen, wouldn't their neighbors be them? Okay, I'm just saying. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Furthermore, the man Moses himself was greatly esteemed in the land of Egypt, both in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. Then Moses said, this is what the Lord says, about midnight I am going to go out into the midst of Egypt. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, all the firstborn of the cattle as well. So there shall be a great cry in all the land of Egypt, such as there has not been before, such as shall never be again. But not even a dog will threaten any of the sons of Israel, nor anything from person to animal, so that you may learn how the Lord distinguishes between Egypt and Israel. And all these servants of yours will come down to me and bow themselves before me, saying, go out, you and all the people who follow you. And after that, I will go out. And he left Pharaoh in the heat of anger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that my wonders will be multiplied in the land of Egypt. So Moses and Aaron performed all these wonders before Pharaoh. Yet the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the sons of Israel go out of his land.
Okay. Real quick, I realized in the plague of darkness, there were a couple things I forgot. Kind of got sidetracked. So this is a defeat of the sun god Ra. So not only are we increasing, the violence and torment and everything in these chapters as the stakes keep getting higher and higher, but we're also working our way up the pantheon. At this point, we're all the way up to the sun god Ra. Okay, he's like the most important deity in Egypt. Okay, so he's the big cheese. All right, but also in most of these things, Aaron is the one working the miracle. But when it comes to blackening out the sun, Moses does it. That's because originally Moses was a sun god. And that's one of the reasons why they get rid, like later editors will get rid of the idea of Moses making it into Judah and Israel, because they're like, no, there's no more worship of Moses in here, okay? We're getting rid of his shrines, the burial place of him. No, he was buried in another land and no one even knows where. That's why that sentence is in there in Deuteronomy. Okay. Wow. Because they had to get rid of the notion that you could have shrines and, stuff like that for Moses. Okay. Because there are stories, the Jews had stories about Moses being a priest up in Shiloh, and he had all these temples and shrines and stuff all over the land. Wow. And it's no, we gotta get rid of that. That's why they're gonna have all these stories about, he wasn't even circumcised, and he offended Yahweh when he poked a rock with a stick instead of just yelling at the rock, and all these things. And so he doesn't even get to go in. Okay.
Wow.
Because Moses and Joshua are basically the same character, okay?
Yeah.
And by that, what I mean is it's the same story of the same God, historicized, and then it got split. One is about the guy who's like the patron saint of Israel, and the other is like, well, we're going to make him the patron saint of Israel in Egypt.
Yes.
It's the same story about the same guy, just told in two different locations.
Wow.
And later I can go into like the giant list of parallels. There's like 40. You know,
Holy snap.
It's redonkulous. It's like very specific things. Oh, you're about to go meet Yahweh. Take off your sandals because this is holy ground. Now come over here about, you know, it's very specific things, including like extend your hand and control the freaking sun. You know,
Wow.
This is a sun god miracle that we're seeing here. You know, and it's just, okay, he's no longer a sun god. He's just a prophet. The same way that Samson, Shamash, the sun god, is no longer a sun god. He's just a hero who has all these sun god miracles. You know, and he gets his hair cut off by the moon goddess and then gets thrown down into the underworld at night so that he can then regrow his hair, which represents the rays of the sun, and rise up again the next morning and tear it out. That's the sun, moon. Yeah, that's what you're looking at.
Wow.
So I wanted to throw that back in there, you know, for the previous plague. Now, here in chapter 11, we start talking about the whole thing, the whole setup for the death of the firstborn, right?
Yes.
Okay. What I want you to do now is I want you to skip. Let's see. Were we at the end of chapter 11?
Yeah.
Okay. So go to chapter 12. Do not start reading at chapter 1, at verse 1. You're going to skip verses 1 through 28. All of that was inserted later.
Wow.
The story picks up. Chapter 12, verse 29 is the next sentence. Go right there and start reading, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. This happens a lot in the Bible.
This is going to be fun.
Chapter 12, verse 29, the story continues.
All right. So now it came about at midnight that the Lord struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle who were
so real quick,
to be dead.
Yeah, they just died again for like the fourth time, and this is picking up right where chapter 11 left off. You know, and then at night all this is going to happen, and it came to pass that it's happening. Okay.
Yes.
Chapter 12, verses 1 to 28 was inserted probably a century after this other stuff was written. It's this whole thing that was inserted later, and the purpose of chapter 12, verses 1 to 28 is to link this story with the Feast of Unleavened Bread that had been celebrated by these people for centuries, okay? Long before this story existed, they had been celebrating this. It probably actually goes back to an ancient Canaanite festival that had been celebrated for thousands of years before any of this was written. And so 28 verses were written down and just crammed right into the middle of the story, interrupting what happened at the end of chapter 11 and then on into chapter 12. It literally stuck in between two sentences to basically try to give a Yahwistic pedigree to this ancient pagan festival.
Wow.
And to link that festival with the events of this story, okay? So going all the way up till about the 4th century BC, we have Jews living in Egypt who are celebrating this, and they don't call it the Passover, nor do they have any idea that this story existed. They have no knowledge of it. They don't even know who Moses is. Worse yet, they write to the temple in Jerusalem and ask them how to celebrate this. They want detailed instructions because they want to get it right.
Yeah.
The temple in Jerusalem writes back, makes no mention of Moses, no mention of the Passover. They don't call it the Passover. It's just this feast of unleavened bread.
Wow.
And they give these instructions that's very similar. It's the same ritual. But the blood on the doorpost isn't there. The story about a bunch of dead kids isn't there. The angel of death, it isn't there. It has nothing at all to do with Egypt.
Wow.
It's just this festival that they celebrate. And no one in Egypt or Israel knows anything about the first 28 verses of chapter 12.
Wow.
That comes later.
And you know what? Just to kind of point out for anybody who's actually watching on the screen now, I'm using blueletterbible.org. You can see that what Jason is sharing with us, it's actually indicated here. It's because you can see where they have this break between verse 28 and verse 29. And then they went ahead and thrown in Exodus 11, 1 through 10 right here.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Jason, that is wow.
Yeah, so I suggest we continue on with chapter 12.
All right.
And then next episode, we'll get chapter 12, verses 1 to 28, because that's a whole other topic.
Yes. Oh, I like it. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Sometimes you have to do things out of order in order to understand them in order.
Well, that appears to be how the Bible was put together in the first place.
We're going to do things more chronologically.
Yes. I love it. All right. So, verse 30, and Pharaoh got up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was no home where there was not someone dead. Then he called for Moses and Aaron at night and said, rise up, get out from among my people, both you and the sons of Israel, go and worship the Lord as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds as you have said, and go and bless me also while you're going. The Egyptians urged the people to send them out of the land in a hurry, for they said, we will all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, with their kneading bowls bound up in the clothes on their shoulders. There's a natural stopping point here. You want to flow a little bit?
Yeah, keep on rolling. Keep on rolling.
Awesome. So now the sons of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, for they had requested from the Egyptians articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have their request. Therefore, they plundered the Egyptians. That's definitely the right word there. Now the sons of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, aside from children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, along with flocks and herds, a very large number of livestock. And they baked the dough which they had brought out of Egypt into cakes of unleavened bread, for it had no yeast, since they were driven out of Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared any provision for themselves. Now the time, we're pretty much at the end. Now the time that the sons of Israel had lived in Egypt was 430 years. And at the end of 430 years, on this very day, all the multitudes of the Lord departed from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be observed for the Lord, for having brought them out of the land of Egypt. This night is for the Lord, to be observed by all the sons of Israel throughout their generations. You want to keep rolling a little bit?
Let's see. Yeah, keep on rolling.
Let's roll. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner is to eat it. But as for every slave that someone has purchased with money after you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. So they got slaves already. Okay. Slaves got slaves already. Wow. A stranger or a hired worker shall not eat it. It is to be eaten in a single house. You are not to bring any of the meat outside of the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Israel are to celebrate this. But if a stranger resides with you and celebrates the Passover to the Lord, all of his males are to be circumcised, and then he shall come near to celebrate it, and he shall be like a native of the land. But no uncircumcised male may eat it. The same law shall apply to the native as to the stranger who resides among you. Then all the sons of Israel did so. They did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the sons of Israel out of the land of Egypt, according to their multitudes.
All right, so couple things. So we had a brief little thing concerning the Passover that got inserted in the last couple verses about, kind of just reiterating stuff that we're going to be learning in the next episode that happened at the beginning of the chapter, okay? And then the chapter ends with, on that day, Yahweh brought them out of the land of Egypt. I don't know if you know this, but they still got some stuff to go, okay?
Yes.
So, like, if you keep reading, suddenly they're right back in Egypt again. Maybe they turned around and Abraham led them right back into the damn thing. So they're about to be right. So Yahweh just let them out on that day, and Yahweh lets them out, and he led them out of the land of Egypt. The end. That's the end of Exodus right there.
Wow.
And someone went, I think there should be more. Just like someone read until like Mark chapter 16, verse 8, and said, all right, so the women left and they never told anyone what they saw. Huh. Well, how did I find out the story? Hey, you know what? And the dude grabbed, ye old typewriter, and he just added verse 9 and just started typing away. And then 3 other people did the same thing. We've got like 4 different additions to the Gospel of Mark after that.
Wow.
Your Bible only contains one of them. There's others. So that's the end of Exodus. We're done. We finished it just now.
Wow.
And the story about like his childhood and stuff, that didn't exist either. Okay, the whole thing starts with he's running around in Egypt as an adult, and he like kills an Egyptian, and he runs for his life. That's where the story begins, and this is where it ends. We're done. Okay, all that stuff that happened earlier, like the first 5 chapters and all that, and there's babies getting killed and all that. That came later. And then everything after this, including the first half of this chapter, that came later.
Okay, hold up. So Jason, you're telling me that somebody was reading this story and they were like, okay, this is about a good 10 chapters. You know what this is missing? This is really missing some dead babies. We've got to add the dead babies in here.
Yeah. They were like, we need a bunch of dead babies.
We need the dead babies, man.
Yeah. And they were like, 1 plague on the Egyptians? That ain't enough.
It's not enough.
We need more. We got to kill these livestock over and over and over again. Okay, I want to kill these cows 4 times. 4 times. Okay.
Yeah. At this moment, you don't know if this is offensive to Egyptians or Hindus at this moment.
Right? No, it's all of them. It's all of them. You ain't worshiping Yahweh and you ain't worshiping him the right way.
That's right.
Oh, we want to offend you, baby. So that's what they're doing here. And so they're also so they're killing the Egyptian firstborn here. Okay. And now that they're starting to compile these things, you've got this nice little thing. Okay, we're killing the Hebrew babies, and now we're killing the Egyptian babies. Okay, cool. They like to bookend it. Now we got the beginning and the end of the book. Okay, because this is the end of Exodus, because now he's led them out of Egypt. The last line just said it. On that day, Yahweh led them out of the land of Egypt.
Wow.
Done. The end. Okay. So our livestock are killed for a fourth time, and the entire point of this story up to this point is that Yahweh is more important and more powerful than all of the gods of Egypt combined, and he can do anything he wants. Wow. He could slap these gods in the face, and the final god here is the Pharaoh, who is like the incarnation on earth. You know, he is the physical manifestation of Ra.
Yes, right. Yes.
And so that's why it culminates with the Pharaoh. It's all been building up to the Pharaoh. Now that they've started to cobble all this stuff together, okay? And so another thing that we have here is this sort of, there's this pattern where you have like this release of the slaves and the offering of the firstborn, and then this celebration of the Passover.
Yeah.
This is Deuteronomy 15 and 16. That's where this is coming from.
Oh,
they're drawing upon those two chapters of Deuteronomy to arrange this little narrative here.
Yeah.
Because the whole point now is to set up for this covenant between the people and Yahweh. And that's what Deuteronomy is all about, okay? Wow. Deuteronomy wasn't written after Exodus. Exodus was built around the structure of Deuteronomy, okay? Now, some of the stories in Exodus are older, but it didn't get its format until these people were looking at parts of Deuteronomy and rearranging things, okay?
Yeah.
The timeline of the Bible, it's messy. It's a spider web, okay? Like there are parts, like there's parts of the book of Judges that weren't written until about 140 BC, okay? When Samson goes and he knocks down the temple to Dagon,
yes,
at like the end of his story, and that happens in the city of Ashdod. We know when that temple was destroyed, and it was like 147 BCE was when that temple was destroyed. Yeah, like they were still worshiping Dagon up until that time period, and so like they have a reference to this event happening, but we know when it happened, okay, and it happened like about 200 years before Christianity. So it's like, now other parts of Judges are really old, but there's little sentences that are much, much later. Okay. So yeah, the timeline's all wonky.
Man.
So that's what we've got here. Yahweh, he comes along, he does this final thing, and he goes through and he kills a whole bunch of babies, in order to convince this Pharaoh to do what he tried to do a long, long time ago.
Yikes.
So it's a giant mess.
It's funny because that always seems to be God's, like, that's like his ace card. His wild card is, if I can't do anything else, Abraham, go sacrifice your child. If I can't do anything else, you know what, let me just kill all of these kids. And then even when the world is bad and things are just going bad, you know what? Let me just kill my kid and see if that works. God is obsessed with killing kids. I've never quite understood it. And I think we're likely going to get to the root of that as we continue with this Bible study.
Another thing is in verse 29. So we have this idea that, Yahweh, he sends this angel of destruction, and we're going to get that too. Like there's this angel of destruction. This is added later to separate Yahweh from his actions, okay? Because in older stories, Yahweh is much more personal. He does a lot of things himself, okay? And just like we saw with the burning bush, where it's like, an angel of the Lord appeared, and then after that, it's like, and the Lord said this, and the Lord said that, and Moses is like, I'm talking to the Lord, and all the rest, right? In verse 29, it's like, around midnight, Yahweh killed all these babies. It doesn't say like this angel that Yahweh sent. No, he did it. And the character of this, angel of destruction that they're going to insert into the story is from he's going to appear again in, is it 2 Samuel maybe? I think it's 2 Samuel, where and he plays an even better role in, I think it's like 1 Chronicles, when it retells the story of Samuel, where Yahweh is like, all right, Dave, I need you to conduct a census, like we've been doing. Conduct a census. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And he goes out and he counts all the people, and Yahweh goes, absolutely not. How dare you do as you were told? For that, angel of destruction, he's coming down. He's going to just start killing people by the tens of thousands.
Yes.
And then he just like sweeps across the land, just straight murdering people, because David did exactly as he was told.
Yep.
But like in Chronicles, it like gets like this really vivid imagery of this giant like black angel with a huge sword that stretches all the way across the sky, and you just like see him coming across the land, and people are just falling dead in the street. It's really, really cool. It's like, I don't know, almost like one of the final scenes from Ghostbusters. They're looking up at the skyscraper. And it's like, yes, So yeah, it's pretty cool. And that's the character that's going to get inserted into the story.
Wow.
But in verse 29, it's like, oh, Yahweh did this. Like, he went and murdered all your babies. Mm-hmm. All right. But the idea that they need to like paint blood on the door, they don't have that yet. Wow. That's going to come later. And it's going to be done in order to kind of, it's basically going to be to serve as an ideological tale, because they later, they have this ritual, and they're like, you know what? I've got an idea. Mm-hmm. What if we explain the origins of this ritual by linking it to the Exodus story?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, that'll be a cool thing. Mm-hmm. And they do this by taking, I think, like 3 different rituals, and they combine them together. Because it wasn't just a single thing. It wasn't just like the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Right, yeah.
Because the thing with the blood on the door wasn't part of that. That's a whole different thing.
Yes.
But what they're doing, they're taking what was it? The Feast of Unleavened Bread, the offering of firstlings, which is basically like you take the first of like harvests and things like that, and also like the firstborn of like your sheep and goats and stuff. And then also a human sacrifice ritual. And they're putting all of them together in order to make this amalgamation. Mm-hmm. And then they're inserting it into the beginning of chapter 12 in order to link it with the Exodus story. Say, this is where we got it. But this was an ancient practice that goes all the way back to ancient Canaan. Okay. And there was like Sumerians who were using part of this. We see a reference to a part of this ritual being conducted in Jericho, where like in order to rebuild Jericho, you're first going to have to perform a human sacrifice in order to start building up walls and gates. We see a reference to this idea in the story of Genesis. Cain, before he can go out and build the first city, he has to sacrifice his brother. Now, this is an ancient ritual, and the story behind it was that you knew that death was going to get involved eventually. So what you did was you tried to satiate death by just kind of like getting it out of the way early.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to build this grand thing, this new a house, a temple, a city, a church, whatever. To avoid calamity, we're going to satiate death. And so then you would take a human or an animal and you would sacrifice it and you would bury them in the foundation, like Jimmy Hoffa. And then you would, you'd build your thing. It's like, oh, we ain't got to worry about it. Death already got his payment. We did that shit in advance. Okay.
Yes.
And this was a practice that occurred, okay? And then later they started to step away from this. But this was something that was alive and well. And we even have stories of Catholic churches being built. And so this is a thing that a lot of people don't know, and it only recently fell out of practice, but it's a remnant of this idea. So Catholic churches, the vast majority of them, if you go any Catholic church before, I think the 1960s or 70s, if you go to the church, you go up onto the altar and you lay down on your back and you look up at the underside of the altar, it's not going to be this one uniform thing of stone or wood. There's going to be something probably about this big inset into the altar. And if you look really close, you're going to see it's got this little thing of glass, and there's going to be some little grayish white something inside it. That's a piece of a human bone. Okay?
Oh, okay.
I've seen the one at my old church and at several other Catholic churches I was involved in. There's little bits of human bone inside of the altars of the vast majority of Catholic churches in the world, okay? And supposedly these are the bones of saints. And the way this worked was when they start spreading out, they would typically just go into catacombs and they would just grab a bunch of human bones and they would just break them up and, oh, you need some bone? Here, this is the bone of, Saint
whoever the
Bob,
fuck you want it to be.
and then just make up a saint. The vast majority of Catholic saints never existed. Like Saint Christopher, the patron saint of travelers. He's Jason from Greek mythology, my namesake, okay? The dude never existed. His story it's the Argos, okay? That's where he came from. Saint Valentine is actually a fictional character from a poem.
No way.
Yeah. There's all sorts of shit like that, okay? But there's a remnant. So there's stories, ancient stories about, I think the first church ever built in Ireland. Supposedly they couldn't get their hands on the bones of a saint. So this one Catholic, he told his Catholic friend, he was like, all right, I'm going to command you to do something that you can't do. I'm going to command you to renounce your faith on punishment of death. You must renounce your faith, knowing that the man couldn't do it. And he's like, well, no, I can't renounce my faith. So you'll just have to execute me. That way he could then become a martyr. So they could then bury him and build the first Catholic church in Ireland. I think it was supposed to be in Ireland. Now, this story is more than hopefully, just complete legend. Though it honestly would not surprise me if that actually happened. I don't think it did. I think it's just a legend. But, this is how things were. You had to make a human sacrifice, and this is ancient stuff. This happened all over the ancient world. Okay. It was in Carthage. It was in Egypt. It was in Jerusalem. Okay. You're going to see in the book of Isaiah where Yahweh is like, yeah, over in this place where I commanded these child sacrifices, we're not going to do that anymore. Okay. And I'm going to punish you for doing it the first time, and it's like, well, you're the one who told us to do it. Whenever you read the Bible and the word Molech appears, it's like, oh, here's this thing. It's this, it was a sacrifice to this god with like the head of a bull, and they would sacrifice their children by throwing them into the fire. That's actually a sort of a mistranslation of the phrase. They weren't sacrificing to a god named Molech. They were conducting a Molech sacrifice, which meant you took a living person and you burned them to death.
Oh, snap.
There was no god named Molech. Molech was the name of the sacrifice. This is how they made sacrifices to Yahweh. There's this book by Heath Drewell that my girlfriend got me for one of our anniversaries called Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel. Fantastic anniversary present. And it's all about, the human sacrifice conducted to Yahweh in ancient Israel. A Molech was a type of sacrifice, and so the correct phrasing would be like, they made a Molech sacrifice, not a sacrifice to Molech.
That is crazy.
That's why it has like a bull head, because there's a remnant of the merging of Yahweh and Baal, who was sometimes depicted with the head of a bull. Yeah, this wasn't a pagan god. This was Yahweh they were burning their children to.
And I just Googled it, and it's right there. Molech is a rite. It is a practice. It's not the name of a god. And I used to struggle with that because I tried to find the origins of that god before, and I could not find that god. Yeah.
This is fairly recent scholarship. So a lot of people that look this stuff up, they're going to get bad information because like a lot of this scholarship is fairly recent. And while it is widely accepted in the scholarly community, it hasn't permeated out into, basically everywhere else, especially not into pop culture. And so you still see it pop up, like in stories and stuff. Oh, the god Molech, it was this evil deity. There was no god Molech.
Man.
And so like part of the Passover rite is that, and that's the blood on the doorpost. You're killing something and then smearing its blood to kind of pay off the god of death in advance. You're paying off death, with this blood of a sacrificed innocent. And
propitiation.
Yeah. And if, you have a vertical and a horizontal wooden beam and you put a bunch of blood on it from a sacrificed innocent for the expiation of sin linked with Yahweh. Yeah, like it literally says in the New Testament that Jesus was a new Passover sacrifice.
That's right.
This is a recollection of like about a 4,000-year-old Canaanite ritual. And wasn't just Canaanite, like, people in ancient Sumer were doing similar things like this. It was all over Mesopotamia. It was all over the place, okay? You sacrificed you sacrifice innocent things to protect yourself in the future, and also like for other reasons.
Sounds like capitalism, doesn't it?
Right. And we're going to get a lot more into that because there's all sorts of weird stuff going into it. Next episode when we cover verses 1 to 28 of this chapter.
I am so looking forward to this. This has been like I have so much to chew on after tonight's conversation. Now the Molech thing that's big for me now. So I'm actually gonna that's gonna keep me from work because I'm gonna have to follow that rabbit trail because that's such good information. But this has been absolutely great. I mean, man, we've made it 2 hours, and I think we made it through almost 4 chapters. And so, before I pull you down off stage, did you have any last words for the folks? And of course, please remember to remind them where they can find you at.
Easiest way to find me is to grab your phone, download any podcast app like GoodPod, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, whatever Google is calling their podcast thing these days, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, whatever, and just search Dragons in Genesis and look for the big orange logo with Godzilla attacking Jerusalem. That's me. Very easy to find. DragonsInGenesis.com has links to everything. You can find me on Facebook, which is a pretty easy way to contact me if you want to ask any questions. Just type Dragons in Genesis podcast, I believe. And again, look for Godzilla. Other than that, keep reading your Bibles, and I won't be here next week because I'm going to be on vacation, taking a road trip and paddling a kayak through a cave. So, all kind of fun stuff. As far as where else we're going, I have no idea. Our road trips are exciting because we don't know where we're going until we go there. Kind of like a throw a dart at the map and, So, the cave thing is on day 1, and that's the only thing we have planned. The rest of the week is wide open. So We'll see what happens.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, man, of course, thank you for hanging out with me tonight, and please enjoy your time away. Next week, we're going to enjoy hearing some of those stories when you get back. And so what we're going to do next week on the channel is, instead of me picking up where we left off, next week, I'm just going to do a recap of what we've already went through. So that way, when Jason gets back with us, we will pick right back up at Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 28. And then we'll see where we flow from there. But Jason, thank you for hanging out with me. I'm going to go ahead and pull you to the backstage. Yoink, everybody. Tonight has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. I hope you're getting as much out of these conversations as I am. And that's exactly what they are. They're conversations. This is a place for us all to come together and talk through some stuff, figure some things out, learn some things together, and have a good time while doing it. This is one of the easiest ways that there is to build community. And this is why I enjoy doing things like this. I absolutely can't wait till next week. I'm going to love to hang out with y'all and do some more stuff. Obviously, listen, if you don't do anything on Sundays, come hang out with us in our Sunday sessions. I'm pretty sure I have a whole bunch of other announcements. Yes, if you want to volunteer for any of our live shows, there's a link for that. Go to our Sunday sessions and you'll find it, because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to find it and post it right now, but it's in here somewhere. And then also, listen, if you want to join this community, get involved with what we're doing, get connected with us on Discord. You'll run into a lot more of us out there, and we are definitely make things happen. And I think this is game night week, so we should be doing game night this Saturday, which I am looking forward to. All right, I think I have said enough. Again, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. Make sure that if you haven't already, that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. And of course, join the community and check out the merch, because we have some of the dopest merch out there. We actually just offloaded some new merch, and so go see what it's like, see what you're thinking. And other than that, until next time, man, y'all keep rising. Y'all be the bridge. Y'all stay progressive, and as I like to say sometimes, stay beautiful. But if you can, I'll holler.
It's just some things, there's no going back. You know what I'm saying?
jwoodbeats.com.
Yeah. I'm not the one with the issues. I hear you. Now here is your tissue. If I'm moving too fast, I might have to dismiss you. And it's really too bad, cause I really will miss you. But I'm not the one with the issues. I left him at church when I made it official. I murdered the curse with my own benediction. Left God in the dirt, call it death of the fiction. Superstition will be served an eviction. Competition will be left in the ditch. Oh my God, it's too damn hot in this kitchen. The fishes of men are now swimming with fishes. Oops, my bad, I guess I'm moving too vicious. Verses sold, I gotta put them on your wish list. Bless my soul, cause I'm dodging your little hit list. I guess you know